Hello, bookworms. Another bookworm, another bookworm, another book review from me. And I want to review a book called Who Would Win in a Fight Between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee by Nicholas Hobbes. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, it's another one of his Bruce Lee books. And that's why I originally I thought this was a book about Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali and how they would square up in an actual fight. But what this actually is, this is a book of sports questions, the kind of things you would want to know in a pub, like things like, why are there two rugby codes? Or why is a duck the most common cricket score? Can you buy success in football? So, oddly enough, now Nicholas Hobbes, I'm pretty sure, is a sports journalist. And what he's done is he's called it the Sports Fans Book of Answers. So he's got loads of questions in here. And just one of the questions, what he's put on the title is who would win in a fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee. It's the kind of thing people would want to ask in a pub. But here's one of the questions. Which sport has the fittest participants? And just to let you know what he thinks is it's cyclists, but then he measures this on something called VO2 max. But then there's cross-country skiers who actually have higher VO2 maxes, as in the amount of oxygen they produce in the blood. So he thinks that they're actually fitter. But basically, this is one of those books which I picked up from a sort of second-hand bookshop, and I literally thought it was about who would win in a fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee, and it was nothing to do with that. It was about other sports questions. But oddly enough, I found that it's fascinating. You pick up and you think, I'm not interested in this, and then you read it and you go, wait a minute. Like, there's some things that I didn't even think about. The questions like, do some darts players actually need to drink alcohol? Never really thought about that. And what he does then is he proceeds then to answer that question in two or three pages and with scientific ideas and references. Was soccer hooliganism ever the English disease? So he talks about hooliganism and how it kind of started, and it does seem that it kind of started off in Britain, but we're not, in England, but it's by no means an English problem. It's kind of all over the world. In motor racing, is the car or the driver more important? I never really thought about that. And he mentions various things in here, and he mentions talks about how when they did produce new cars, how did it, when they put a new driver in, how did they rate? So it's a really, really fascinating book. Honestly, you sit there and you go, okay, I'm not going to look at another question. Then you look at it and you go, wait a minute, like, what are the upper limits of sporting performance? And he kind of he measures it in various ways. I haven't actually read that one. Do teams wearing red actually do better than other teams? I didn't even know that was a question. So that's kind of interesting, but apparently it does make a difference. Teams wearing red seem to make a difference to players on the field. I didn't even know that was a thing. So maybe there's some method in the madness of Manchester United and Liverpool wearing red on the field. Maybe Scotland need to do that. We've got the World Cup coming up soon, so who knows? Maybe there'll be something there. Should performance-enhancing drugs be allowed in sport? Well, I know I've got my answer about that. I would say no, but he has an answer, and he basically talks. I think what he said, one hopes that it is not, and that most sports fans want to watch recognisably human competitors to whom they can relate. But we should not fool ourselves that the current arrangements are right and just. So he obviously goes into the arrangements for drug testing and performance-enhancing chemicals in sport. But there are some sports where, like bodybuilding, there's no way you can achieve what you do there without using performance-enhancing drugs. The ones that use the performance-enhancing drugs are just on another level compared to the ones that don't. And you can see that in the movie industry when people stop using performance enhancing drugs, and you can see how they kind of just shrink. Just look at the guy, The Rock, for example, now. But there's loads of other things in here, things that I'd never thought about. How does reverse swing work? Reverse swing is a thing where you sort of put an extra shine on one side of the ball, and when you throw the cricket ball, it swings to one side. I mean, although these are interesting questions, the writer, Nicholas Hobbes, writes in a good way. So you want to read the next question. Okay, what about that? So, I mean, for example, how does reverse swing work? So he's got a diagram there about reverse swing, and there was all sorts of stories. I remember especially when Pakistan came to play England in one of the test matches, and they were saying, they were tampering with the ball. That's where that thing came from. And they were using a bottle top to put a different, thing on the one side of the ball so that it spun differently. I mean, here's an interesting, I'll read this paragraph. According to one of it, this is how does reverse swing work? And Nicholas Hobbes has written about this. According to one of its greatest exponents, the Pakistani all-rounder Imran Khan, the phenomenon of reverse swing is too complex for ordinary minds to grasp. In fact, those who have not benefited from a first-rate education are apt to mistake it for a form of cheating. As he told India Today magazine in June 1994, look at the people who have taken a rational stand on this. Tony Lewis, Christopher Martin Jenkins, Derek Pringle, they are educated Oxbridge types. Look at the others, Lamb, Botham and Truman. Class and upbringing makes a difference. Botham's response was, if an Oxford education tell you that it's all right to cheat, then give me Buckler's Mead Secondary Modern School anytime. That's good comeback. So what is reverse swing? I'm not even going to go into what reverse swing is. And he talks about how at different speeds the ball then reacts differently, and some people would say that they would just shine it differently on one side, and you can see that in how some of them bowled, and some people say they used a bottle top to kind of scratch up the side. What did it say at the end? He goes, Imran Khan was right that reverse swing required an educated mind to comprehend, but it was one that outstripped even his own. As for his claim that upbringing was also necessary, by the time of the 2005 Ashes series, Britain's school standards had improved to the point where even a product of a comprehensive like Simon Jones could reverse swing the ball as well as any toff. So basically, reverse swing was one of these things that became something that they all did. I mean, a really interesting question again. Have the Olympic Games ever made a profit? Never even thought about that. I just assumed that they did, but apparently they didn't. The only one that made a profit, and that includes the ones that Britain held, I think was the one in Los Angeles in 1984. That was when the Russians, I think, were banned. And Atlanta in 1996. And I think part of the reason was because they didn't have to build all the stadiums. So a lot of these, and they had lots of corporate sponsorship. So they actually did make a profit. But if you think about it, if they have to build a new stadium, that's a lot of expenditure. So, and they were talking about the estimate for the 2012 games meant that it would cost more to stage than the annual gross domestic. This is in Britain. That to stage the 2012 games in Britain would cost more than the annual gross domestic product of the following 66 competing countries: Albania, Antigua and Barbuda, Armenia, the Bahamas, Bahrain, Barbados, Belize, Benin, Bhutan, Botswana, Brunei, Darussalam. Oh my God, the list goes on and on. In other words, basically, it didn't say combined, but definitely more than any of those countries could their own domestic product. So I suppose that explains why you're not really going to have the Olympics in, say, the Seychelles or Rwanda or Macedonia anytime soon, because it's bloody expensive and they never make a profit. I mean, other questions why do female tennis players grunt? I never even thought about that. But apparently it's because they expel, it makes the swing more powerful, and a bit like martial artists when they go and breathe out. But also it's because the other player can actually tell from the sound of the strings what the shot's going to be like, so they kind of disguise it. I didn't know that. Are sumo wrestlers fat but fit, or just plain fat? I'm not even going to look at the answer to that one, actually, because I'm a sumo wrestler in preparation, so I don't want to put myself off. Oh my God, can white men run? A bit racist, that. But Nicholas Hobbes goes into the whole thing, and he says that it is sometimes used as a racist argument, and it's like people are scared of the idea of eugenics. But he says, look, the fact is, some places in the world, humans are built slightly differently. So, for example, in Kenya, they're a lot thinner. They can do long distance runs because they have more muscle than fat or something, and it's a good. It can improve their performance by 10%, but at the same time, their football team is rubbish apparently. So that's kind of interesting. So he talks a lot about the Kenyan long distance runners, and he says, look, it's actually racist to think that other people aren't putting in effort. He goes, there is going to be slight differences because of physiological differences in certain parts of the world. So that's kind of interesting. And he did mention something about black people in America. He said that, was there a de facto eugenics program that happened there because of black slaves that went over to America, and that they were interbred? I did just notice that there. I don't know if that's proven, but some people might argue that. Why do cyclists shave their legs? I don't know about that. I mean, what makes something a sport rather than a pastime? So anyway, there's lots of different questions, and although he says it starts off with who would win in a fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee, which, by the way, he says is a kind of unanswerable question because Bruce Lee was a boxer. Muhammad Ali was a boxer. Bruce Lee was a martial artist who looked at street techniques, and what he did in the movies was more for show. So comparing apples and oranges is just not the same thing. But he does bring in the whole idea of Muhammad Ali fighting Antonio Inoki, who was a wrestler, and it was just a complete farce. And the guy just lay down on the floor and kept hitting Ali's legs. And Ali actually had a lot of bad bruising and nearly risked having a clot because he couldn't bend down. He was standing up. So it was really not the same thing. Funnily enough, I've got another book called Bruce Lee versus Muhammad Ali, The Fight of the Century. And this is written by kind of like a fan about what would happen in an actual fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee. This was actually answering that question. I found I had this on my bookshelf, but I'll do this another time. But this is who would win in a fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee, The Sports Fan's Book of Answers by Nicholas Hobbes. It's actually a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. So yeah, it's drawing on statistics and science, doctors and philosophers. Nicholas Hobbes answers the whys, whats and hows so that you don't have to. And he tackles the questions of sport that thousands have debated in front of the TV and in the pub, but for which they've never found definitive answers. I hadn't even thought some of the questions, but very interesting, a lot of fun. I bought it as a second-hand book, but honestly, it's written down as being as part of the humor category, but actually it's not. It's kind of trying to give some kind of factual spin and actually answer these questions. So that's actually definitely is funny and informative. So who would win in a fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee? The Sports Fan's Book of Answers by Nicholas Hobbes. If you do get it, hope you enjoy it.